You are now listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation.
Hi there guys, this podcast is all about improving your writing. Maybe you can write okay, but okay isn't good enough if you want to band 7, 8 or 9. What you need to be doing is using more advanced structures, and it needs to be more coherent. So we're going to look at ways you can improve it. And then after we look at the negative constructions, we're going to look at some formal writing tips. Okay? Been away, I've been very busy. I did a course with Stanford, with Stanford University. Well, actually I did an online course with Stanford University, the free one, which you can do at coursera.org. Definitely recommend that for anybody, especially if you're in with sciences. Lots of courses there, all published by the major universities. You've got Stanford, Duke University, you've got lots, and then there's, I think it's edX as well, with free courses from Harvard and California MIT as well. So definitely check out those. And the great thing is you can study in English as well, which is a bonus. Some of my students have been doing it and they've seen big improvements with their English. Anyway, on with today's subject. Today we're just going to look at one of the components the teacher taught in the course I did, and what it does, it makes your writing more concise, makes it more succinct, because you can basically say more with less words. Okay, because what we've got to understand when we're writing academically and we're writing professionally is that lots of students suffer from being wordy. That means they say a lot of words when less can communicate exactly the same thing. I've been describing it for the last couple of weeks as though we're taking like 5 litres of tomato juice and really reducing it down to a concentrated tomato paste. And I'll give you an example, okay? All the downloads are going to be available at the website, so you'll have to go over there. And you can get the PDFs for this because it makes it a lot easier. For example, in our essay, if we've got a sentence and it says, the government has not got infrastructure that is suitable. Okay, we can say this so it means exactly the same but with less words. What we'd say is, the government lacks infrastructure that is suitable. And we've reduced it to 5 words. It means exactly the same. And if we can reduce it to less words, we can say more. The essay's got more impact, you know, and it's easier to read. The government has not got, the government lacks infrastructure that is suitable. All right. So, another example. It is argued it is not logical to learn English just solely from a book. Okay? Now, here, the teacher taught us that what we can do is get the negative construction and use the Latin verb, which in this case would be logical, get the main verb with its negative construction, and then we use the negative version. So we could say, it is argued it is illogical to learn English just solely from a book. Can you see that? We say it is argued it is illogical instead of saying it is argued it is not logical. Okay? And once again we reduce the words, we show more vocabulary, and we pick up points. And another thing, okay, which you've got to be aware when you're looking at your essay, is if you're saying words that are just repeating themselves. In this case, it is not logical to learn English just solely from a book. Just solely from a book. You might as well say one of them or the other, because saying both is a bit pointless. So we could say the end sentence would be, it is argued it is illogical to learn English just from a book. And we reduce the sentence by a few words, and it becomes more concise, more succinct. And going back to that tomato sauce, the tomato, instead of 5 litres of tomato juice, we've got 50 grams of concentrated tomato sauce, alright? The next sentence, those students who cannot organise their study time efficiently in the time allocated will always suffer really bad consequences. Now, we can basically say all this in 9 words. Okay? I'll say it again. Those students who cannot organise their study time efficiently in the time allocated will always suffer really bad consequences. Now, of course, if you've got the PDF in front of you, it's going to be a lot easier. So go over to the website and get your hands on that. But I'll just explain what we can do here. Okay? So we've got those students who cannot organise their study time. Okay? Possibly we could just cut those and we could just say students who cannot organise their study time. Alright? It's more concentrated. And then we've got the negative structure, who cannot. Okay? So once again we can go to the Latin verb, and the Latin verb for cannot is able to, or the Latin verb for can is able to. Then the negative version of this is unable to. So immediately we eliminate 2 words. We can say students unable to organize their study time efficiently in the time allocated, blah blah blah. And once again we've got 2 words, exactly the same words in the same sentence. Not a good idea. So what would be better would be students unable to organize their time, their study time efficiently. We don't even need study time because we've got students, so we could just say students unable to organize their time efficiently. Then this last part will always suffer really bad consequences. We could just say will be punished, and we're saying more or less the same but with less words. And I did go quite ruthless because I said students unable to organize their time efficiently will be punished. I did cut out allocated because it's my assumption that it's implied. If you're organizing your time efficiently, we can get it's a similar message to in the time allocated. Okay, this way it was more concentrated and we're saying the same with less. Okay, alright then. So just to summarize for those that are listening and don't have the PDF, the first sentence was, those students who cannot organize their study time efficiently in the time allocated will always suffer really bad consequences. I changed that to students unable to organize their time efficiently will be punished. Now then, nobody was able to conduct an analysis of the blood in the office because the office had not enough pieces of equipment. Okay? If you're writing like this, stop. Print out your piece of paper, cut it up, and throw it in the bin. Now, if you're writing like this, you need to really look at your writing and see if you can spot those negative constructions. Try and find the negative verb and try and avoid word repetition and look for ways we can say the same but with less words. Okay? For example, here we have nobody was able to conduct an analysis of the blood in the office. Here we have nobody was able to. And we can do the reverse of what we did last time, and we could say nobody could conduct an analysis. Alright? And you've probably heard I say office twice, which is a waste of words basically. And what we could say is nobody could conduct an analysis of the blood in the office. That's fine. Because, and in the first version I said because the office had not enough pieces of equipment. So we've already killed the office from the sentence, and then we're saying had not enough pieces of equipment. Well, first we can get rid of pieces because it's not relevant to this sentence. So we could just say equipment, and that's fine. And we're saying had not enough. What we could say would be, we've got a negative construction. We can look for the Latin verb that means something similar, which is sufficient. The negative form of sufficient is insufficient. And what we have is, because there was insufficient equipment. Alright? Nobody could conduct an analysis of the blood in the office because there was insufficient equipment. Now, if we really wanted to go a bit further, we could say, which is a point I'm going to explain in the next podcast, would be nobody could analyze the blood in the office. Yeah? And we change conduct an analysis with the noun, we change it into a verb and we say nobody could analyze the blood in the office because there was insufficient equipment. Okay, and we've reduced it a lot, the sentence. It's easier to read and it's less wordy, so we can put in more information for the same amount of work. The next one, we were not unable to decide to do the necessary research needed. Horrible sentence. This one needs printing out and burning. What I'd say with this one is we were not unable to decide. So if we were not unable, two negatives make positives. We were able to decide, and we can also reduce, we can get rid of the verb to be, and we can just say we could decide to do the necessary research needed. And you've probably guessed, I hope so anyway, that we can also eliminate one more word from that sentence. And from that sentence it would be either necessary or needed. So the final sentence would be we could decide to do the necessary research. Okay? And once again, saying exactly the same. We've probably reduced it by about 3 or 4 words and gives us more space to communicate another point. Okay? And it's easier to read. So you're going to get points for coherence. This is a million times more coherent than we were not unable to decide to do the necessary research needed. That's a mess. That's a disaster. Compared to that beautiful, concise structure, we could decide to do the necessary research. Okay. Now, this is the final one. Alright? At the beginning, we said one possible alternative in certain sentences would be, instead of saying does not have, we could say lack. Okay? For example, the government does not have resources. The government lacks resources. Well, another way we could say a similar concept, for example, in this essay, in this sentence, the local government did not invest in the community for 6 years. We could say, instead of did not, which isn't the most sophisticated structure, it's not the most, we're not going to get many points for that. What we could say to show the examiner good vocabulary, good grammar range, we could say the local government failed to invest in the community for 6 years. So if you failed to do something, it means you didn't do it. Alright? So 2 alternatives there. We've got lack as a verb and failed to or failed to. And of course changing the negative construction and trying to use the negative verb. Okay? Now a few points for formal writing. 1. Never use get, please. Get is wonderful for spoken English, but never use it in your formal writing. Use the Latin version, okay? Use the Latin equivalent. For example, I got a car. We could say, I obtained a car. Instead of, let's see, he got a prize yesterday. He achieved a prize. And the same for purchase, the same for buying. I got a sandwich. We could say I bought a sandwich, or we could even say I purchased a sandwich. Okay? So stay away from the spoken forms, stay away from contractions, because they're used more for informal, semi-formal writing, and mainly for speaking. Okay? So we don't use get, we don't use contractions. Try and avoid negative constructions if you can. Try and use the negative verb. This was the first part of a 3 podcast series. In a week or two, the second podcast will be available. But if you really want to get a deep understanding of this, and you really want to see the examples in front of you, which is a great way to improve your English, because you can hear the words, you can hear the sounds, associate them with the words in front of you. And it's just easy to understand if you can actually see sentences instead of trying to hear the sentences, trying to picture the sentences. So if you want the PDF, go over to IELTS Podcast, and if you sign up, when you sign up, you can get all the information and that extra podcast about the interview I did with the ex-IELTS examiner. Okay, so go over to IELTSPodcast.com, sign up, leave your email, and enjoy the podcasts.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.